Hello, hello, welcome, welcome. So, I was going to bed, it's 5 a.m., but then I saw there is a new video from VaatiVidya about lore, and I was waiting for it for so long about Elden Ring lore. So here we go. This is his first video, so I'm hoping he's gonna do a long series, which I'm sure he will, like he did for Dark Souls and other stuff. So I'm very excited to look into it, and since I very much enjoy watching other people react to lore and random videos. I thought that hey, why not try it? I record myself watching and see how it goes. I will not just force talk on top of it just to say that I'm creating content. Like maybe the entire video will be me silent, but it depends how it will go. I might pause a bit in the middle. So this is VaatiVidya, my favorite Dark Souls creator, old game creator, and yeah, looking forward to see what he dug up. I know he takes content from other people too, and many people don't like him for that, but I mean I don't care because he presents it in the best way possible, and that's what I want to consume. So yeah, you can find the links of the videos in the description below. I will put them there. But let's watch. I'm excited. During my playthrough, I read everything, and I hope. I think I understand around 20% of the whole lore. There are things I understand, things I have no idea about. So yeah, let's see what it has. I will call out if I learned something new or if something I already knew. So here we go. Wait, this didn't work. Okay.
Our story doesn't begin in the lands between. It begins in the cosmos, far away, with an outer god called the Greater Will. There are a lot of outer gods mentioned in Elden Ring. You can think of these kind of like the Great Ones.
Shit. So there will be spoilers for Bloodborne, apparently. So spoilers alert, spoilers alert. Let me go back. Spoiler alert. There will be spoiler from Bloodborne and other Dark Souls content. So I was hoping he wouldn't do it, but he did it. So there is one thing here he showed. This Nihil. Mog's Nihil attack.
The Greater Will. There are a lot.
This one. So this is when Mog does Nihil, 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 and he fucks you up with the bloodlust. I read about it that there is like this mother god that's sitting there, and you're poking her in the ass while shouting Nihil, and this is what's causing blood loss. Just Miyazaki / George Martin things. So yeah.
Lot of outer gods mentioned in Elden Ring. You can think of these kind of like the Great Ones of Bloodborne. They're distant beings, they're all-powerful, and they're quite unknowable by design. But many of these outer gods want to make their presence felt in the world. The Greater Will, maybe most of all. To this end, it sent a golden star hurtling towards the lands between. The Elden Star's incantation tells us that this golden star was bearing.
One more thing, I love that he puts the source here. So at the bottom, he says where he got this lore. Now, if I will keep the subtitles on, but it might hide this, but you can pause the video to read it if you want.
A beast, an Elden beast. The Elden Remembrance calls it a vassal beast of the Greater Will. If you didn't know, a vassal is someone who holds land on behalf of their overlord. Obviously, this is fitting in this case, because the Elden beast occupied the lands between on behalf of the Greater Will, and was a living incarnation of the concept of order. As such, this beast would later become the Elden Ring. The Elden Ring itself is made up of runes of power, some great, some small, that together represent a sort of logic for the world to follow. Thus, the Elden Ring represents order. The true nature of this order is a subject of constant debate and research undergone by fundamentalists. but two of the key fundamentals are the laws of causality and regression. You can think of the law of causality as cause and effect, where actions have consequences, and those consequences are new causes that branch out into infinity. These are the relationships between things. Then there's the law of regression that states that all things eternally yearn to converge and return to their roots. Fittingly, then, the Elden Ring is housed within the Erd Tree, which towers over the lands between. But it's very important to stress that life in the lands between did not begin with the Erd Tree, the Elden Ring, or the Elden Beast. No, the lands between were occupied well before the Greater Will came. There were other beings here.
Giants.
There were other factions here. There were other gods here. And there was even another great tree here before the Erd Tree. And this is where a huge twist regarding the Erd Tree comes in. So, there are incantations in the game called Aspects of the Crucible. According to their descriptions, these are manifestations of the Erd Tree's primal vital energies. And I quote, "They are an aspect of the primordial crucible where all life was once blended together." But how could all life be blended together in the Erd Tree if the Erd Tree appeared after life existed? Well, there can only be one answer, right? That the Erd Tree is a parasite, and it took over a tree that existed here before. This ancient tree was called the Great Tree. So the Great Tree was almost certainly the location.
Best evidence, Siluria's Crucible Knight Helm. No. So because I paused because I never knew about the Great Tree. I don't remember reading about it, so that was missing from me. So apparently the Great Tree came before the Elden Tree. Okay, one more thing. I love the laws of causality and regression. That the spell actually does what it explains to be. Like the laws of causality is every cause has every action has a equal reaction. That's third law of Newton, and it's actually reflected in the miracle itself. So that's cool.
Of this primordial crucible, and it must have been a very powerful primordial force for the Greater Will to have commandeered. It might even be the reason the lands between is important to the Greater Will in the first place. It also explains why spells and enemies related to the Great Tree's crucible would eventually be looked down upon. For example, the knot talisman is fashioned from a knotted vestige of the crucible, and it was considered a signifier of the divine in ancient times, but is now increasingly disdained as an impurity as civilization has advanced. Enemies related to the crucible are the Omen, the Misbegotten, and the Crucible Knights, and all three of them would be shunned, enslaved, or imprisoned. Those who speak for the Erd Tree don't want you to know its roots, so to speak. According to the spell, Protection of the Erd Tree, in the beginning everything was in opposition to the Erd Tree, but through countless victories in war, it became the embodiment of...
Yeah, so the Erd Tree came and like completely was a dictator on the land. It did a military takeover of everything, and her champion, the biggest champion, was Margit, or also known as Morgoth. He fucked up everything and made the Erd Tree win.
Of order.
In Marika's own words, the Erd Tree governs all. The choice is thine. Become one with the order, or divest thyself of it. To wallow at the fringes, a powerless upstart.
But the Greater Will needed more than a big tree. It needed loyal agents in the lands between. To this end, it has the Two Fingers, who are its envoys. The Two Fingers heirloom has a weird picture of them, but it reads, "Of course, fingers cannot speak, yet these are eloquent. Persistently they wriggle, spelling out mysteries in the air. Thus did we gain the words of our faith." These words are in...
I want to remove the subtitles, they are annoying me. Yeah.
Thus did we gain the words of our faith. These words are interpreted by the finger readers. These are the undying old crones that you would have found throughout the lands between. They pass down the wisdom of the two fingers, or at least they used to.
Your fingers, please, your fingers. I can read them.
Most of them appear to have lost their purpose, and they're desperate to read your fingers and tell you annoying riddles, since their two fingers are likely dead. And yes, of course, there are multiple sets of two fingers. You would have found their corpses on the tops of the divine towers. Atop these towers, you loot the fingers in order to activate the true power of a great rune. Specifically though, you are giving benediction back to your great rune. You're taking a blessing back from the two dead fingers, essentially. This is just one of many blessings that the two fingers can bestow, and my point is kind of that the two fingers clearly have...
Oh, I didn't notice that Rani, this is Rani, where you find her and give her the ring to trigger her next step. She was sitting under two fingers.
more than just influence. They have real power on some level. The Greater Will needs these powerful envoys and agents because, while it's obviously incredibly powerful, it does seem limited by a few things. First is space. The Greater Will didn't come to the lands between itself, it sent an Elden beast to do its bidding instead. Second is time. There is a moment later in the game where your pair of two fingers goes still because they're forced to commune with the Greater Will for guidance.
When they are finished, the fingers will again offer their guidance. But thousands, if not tens of thousands, of moons must first pass. No matter for me. But you, how will you ever manage the wait?
So the Greater Will needs a physical manifestation of order. It needs envoys to convey its will, but what it also needs is a god. Introducing Marika the Eternal. I have this utterly enormous mind map of Elden Ring's lore, and there's a reason she's at the center. She's essentially the equivalent of Gwyn from Dark Souls, except...
Holy fuck. I wanted to do something like this in my second playthrough. Share it with me.
she's at the center. She's essentially the equivalent of Gwyn from Dark Souls, except unlike Gwyn, Marika didn't just crawl out of the dark and find power. To an extent, it seems like she earned it. We don't know much about her origins, except that she is of the Numen race, which is actually an origin that you can choose in the character selection screen. Numen come from outside the lands between, and are supposed descendants of denizens of another world, long-lived but seldom born. At some point, Marika was chosen as an Emperian. What is an Emperian? Well, an Emperian is a being chosen by the Fingers as a candidate for godhood. As an Emperian, Marika received the aid of a shadow to do her bidding. So what is a shadow? Well, it's a wolf, shadowbound to its Emperian by the two fingers. Luna Princess Rani is another example of an Emperian with a shadowbound beast. You would have met Blythe. These creatures are the Emperian's very own shadow. They are completely loyal to their needs and, by definition, incapable of treachery. Marika's shadow was a beast called Malakath. Every Emperian uses their shadow in different ways, but Marika's sole need of her shadow was as a vessel to lock away destined death. So what is destined death? Well, according to Enya, it's the Rune of Death.
The Rune of Death goes by two names. The other is Destined Death.
We mentioned earlier that the Elden Ring is made up of runes, and at some point, maybe when she was chosen as a god, Marika plucked the Rune of Death from the Elden Ring. She gave the Rune of Death to Malakath, her totally loyal shadow, who bore a black blade imbued with this rune. It's kind of genius, really. In a single act, she removed the concept of death from the lands between, while also commanding total control of death through her shadow, who could deliver it at her whim.
Yeah, I kind of got that part, that the Elden Ring is construct of many runes, and it created the Elden Beast. And it's like you can think of it as many personality, and you can remove some personality from it. So Marika removed first this death from it, which actually stopped death from the land between, and she gave it to Maliketh for protection. But I know later that this was stolen and used to kill Godfrey. But then the ring was shattered, so each part of those runes was given to one of her children. I think he'll
Now,
get to it.
some of you might be asking, if death is removed from the lands between, how come I can kill this dog? First off, shame on you. Second, from a lore point of view, that dog isn't really dead. It's simply in the process of its spirit, or its soul, returning to the Erd Tree. Catacomb dungeons, for example, are specifically constructed near the roots of the Great Tree for this reason, so that the Erd Tree can reabsorb their ashes back into it. This process replaced the concept of a death that you were destined to have, but this random spirit outside of a catacomb dungeon says it best.
Patience until the time comes.
As another example of this theory, when you kill a major boss, you receive a remembrance of them. These are spirits, and they are hewn into the Erd Tree. In this way, thanks to the Erd Tree's grace, their spirits are immortalized, in a sense. This new form of death also explains what's happening when you summon spirits.
From ash and return to the Erd Tree.
However, some spirits never return to the Erd Tree, and they rise within death as corpses or skeletons instead.
To refute the Erd Tree is called to return to
So
live
this
within
was the
death.
new order, and it's important to stress that it was in this moment, when the Rune of Death was removed, when Destined Death was taken, this is when Order became the Golden Order.
The forbidden shadow plucked from the Golden Order upon its creation.
Specifically, this was Marika's Golden Order. So not only did she become a god and a vessel for the Elden Ring, she became renowned as Marika the Eternal for her removal of Destined Death. It was a huge part of her character and her reign as well. However, Marika had more than just death to conquer. She had wars to fight, as the world was occupied by many forces that could threaten her Golden Order. There was war with the Stormlord, who likely ruled over Stormvale, and there was a war with the Giants, who were masters of a flame that could burn the Erd Tree. There was war with the Ancient Dragons, who incidentally had stones that could twist time and thus slay a god. And finally, there was war brewing with the Carrion royalty, who had previously obeyed laws which contravened the Golden Order. Thus, sort of similar to how the Greater Will needed an Emperian to enforce its will, Marika herself needed someone to wage war. So, there was to be a husband, a consort, an Elden Lord. The man chosen was Horalu, a ferocious warrior who became known as the Lord of the Battlefield.
Godfrey Icon Elder Lord Armor. Oh wow. Wow, okay, I got this completely wrong. I thought Radagon was... no, Radagon was her second husband. So her first husband I didn't know about, apparently is Horalu, which is Godfrey.
His crown was warranted with strength, and while it was for this strength that Marika married him, he was also required to take a vow to conduct himself as a lord. To suppress the ceaseless lust for battle that raged within, Horalu took the beast regent Sarosh upon his back. You'll notice this is another example of a beast being given for the purpose of serving order. Thus, in this moment, he went from being Horalu, warrior, to Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, consort to Queen Marika, and a certified demigod.
Wow, okay, this is completely new. So, alright. So her first husband was actually Horalu, and she married him to wage war, and the beast on his back was to keep him in order so he doesn't just rage.
Godfrey and Marika had 3 demigod children together. There was Godwyn the Golden, who you saw being killed in the opening trailer, and there were also the reviled Omen twins, Morgoth, who guards the Erd Tree, and Mohg, who became Lord of Blood. You might think that Godric was another demigod child, but he actually wasn't. Instead, he was probably descended from Godwyn.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll talk about the demigods more in detail in another video, so subscribe for that. But for now, just know that Godfrey and his offspring were the first demigods, henceforth known as the Golden Lineage. In his wars, Godfrey led his 16 Crucible Knights into battle, who were named so for they fought with the primordial powers of the Erd Tree. Their incantations were aspects of the Crucible itself, and they likely fought giants, dragons, the Stormlord, and more to usher in their age, the age of the Erd Tree.
In Marika's own words, "Hark, brave warriors. Hark, my lord Godfrey. We commend your deeds. Guidance hath delivered ye through each ordeal to the place ye stand. Put the giants to the sword and confine the flame atop the mount. Let a new epoch
And she
begin,
wins the sword.
an epoch glistening with life.
And then
Brandish
this is,
the Elden
Giant
Ring
Lord.
for the age of the Erd Tree."
The Erd Tree would go on to be largely seen as a blessing for all of those in the lands between, especially those close to it in Lanedell, the
Blessing
capital
my
city
ass.
of the Erd Tree. The tree bestowed blessings. For example, the dew that dropped from its branches were like jewels. It loomed overhead as a constant reminder of order, and its roots reached far and wide, relieving many of the burden of death. In fact, Erd Tree burial was one of the highest honors a hero could receive. One by one, the previous factions of the world fell. Stormvale was conquered, and the Stormlord was defeated. The giants were put to the sword, and their fell god was killed by Marika herself. The ancient dragons broke down the walls of Lanedell, but met fierce retaliation. However, I think the House of the Erd Tree encountered the most trouble against the land to their southwest, Leonia. Here, the House of the Moon repelled their offensives time and time again, and I mean that literally, because there was not just one but two wars fought here, and in both of these, there was no victory for the Golden nor for the Moon. And I suspect it was probably because of these lobsters. These damn things can snipe you from like a mile away, and it's bullshit. Actually, it was probably because of the Carrion Knights,
I agree with
who,
you, the
according to
lobster.
their weapons, were able to wield sorcerous battle skills, and despite numbering fewer than 20, this power made them a match for even the champions of gold in battle. These enchanted knights were anointed by the Lunar Queen, a young astrologer who went on to establish the House of Caria as royalty in this land. With her bewitching lunar magic, she won over the Academy of Raya Lucaria, where glintstone sorcery was studied, and united the Carian royal family and the learned scholars of Raya Lucaria defended their home from the golden aggressors. At the head of this great golden army was Radagon.
Lord Radagon was a great champion, possessed of flowing red locks. He came to these lands at the head of a great golden host. When he met Lady Renala in battle,
These two champions clashed, fell in love, and joined their houses.
Radagon once cleansed himself with celestial dew, repented his territorial aggressions, and swore his love to Renala. The order of the Erd Tree and the fate of the moon were conjoined, and all the wounds of war forgiven.
You might think it strange that the Greater Will would permit this union, but it's not too odd, all things considered. As with most From Software games, sorcery and faith are just two sides of the same coin, and both of these powers stem from the cosmos. Radagon and Renala were known to have 3 children together. Lunar Princess Rani, who inherited her mother's propensity for lunar magic, Radan, who took after his father Radagon and would go on to master gravitational magic, and Rykard, who pioneered new hex sorceries and would go on to feed himself to a great serpent. It follows that at some point after this, Marika began to harbor doubts. Doubts about the Golden Order, that she had had a hand in creating.
In Marika's own words, "I declare mine intent to search the depths of the Golden Order through understanding of the proper way. Our faith, our grace is increased. Those blissful early days of blind belief are long past. My comrades, why must ye falter?
And it's at this point that we should talk about Marika's motivations, her character. This is surely going to be one of those huge points of debate in the coming years, but for now, my working theory is that she wanted to discover the truth behind order and the truth behind the greater will, and she believed that bonds had to be broken so that they could be better understood. She believed that there was great meaning to be found in hardship.
Queen Marika has high hopes for us, that we continue to struggle, unto eternity.
For Lord Godfrey, his struggle ended at the end of his campaigns. According to his armor, he led the war against the giants, faced the Storm Lord alone, and then there came a moment when his last worthy enemy fell, and it was then, as the story is told, that the hue of Lord Godfrey's eyes faded. In truth, he was robbed of his grace. Then Marika sent him away.
My lord,
That bitch.
and thy warriors, I divest each of thee of thy grace. With thine eyes dimmed, ye will be driven from the lands between. Ye will wage war in a land afar, where ye will live and die.
This became known as the Long March of the Tarnished, as Godfrey and his tarnished descendants walked away from the lands between. But Queen Marika absolutely had a plan here, that Lord Godfrey and his descendants would one day return stronger, having struggled outside of grace.
Then, after thy death, I will give back what I once claimed, return to the lands between, wage war, and brandish the Elden Ring, grow strong in the face of death. Warriors of my lord, Lord Godfrey.
Soon after, she found a new husband. Either that or a new husband was found for her.
When Godfrey, first Elden Lord, was hounded from the lands between, Radagon left Renala to return to the Erdtree capital, becoming Queen Marika's second husband and king consort, taking the title of Second Elden Lord. The mystery endures to this day as to why Lord Radagon would cast Lady Renala aside, and moreover, why a mere champion would be chosen for the seat of Elden
They
Lord.
wanted to repair
Whatever the
you.
case, as a part of this union, Radagon's prior 3 children with Renala became demigod stepchildren, granted grace thanks to their new family tree. Renala was broken by this, and so was her country, Leonia. The Queen's set reads, when Renala, head of both the Academy of Raya Lucaria and the Carian royal family, lost her husband Radagon, her heart went along with him, and then those at the Academy realized that Renala was no champion after all. In the wake of Radagon's betrayal and Renala's poor judgment, Leonia struggled with civil war, with the Academy of Raya Lucaria on one side and the Carian royals
This
on the
makes
other.
lots of sense now.
And it's here, during the age of
Because there was many places where it says that, hey, the Academy and the Carian family fought together against the Golden Order, but then other places they fought each other, so the timeline didn't work in my head. So yeah, so they fought together back when the Golden Order was trying to take over, and they repelled them. But when Radagon left Renala, yeah, shit went crazy. I think this is the handiwork of George Martin.
the Erdtree that Luna Princess Rani, daughter of Renala and Radagon, stole a fragment of the Rune of Death.
It happened during the golden age of the Erdtree, long before the shattering of the Elden Ring. Someone stole a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malekith, the Black Blade.
As mentioned previously, Malekith was Marika's shadow, and he had sealed destined death in a black blade. Then a fragment, only a fragment, of this Rune of Death was stolen. And once this happened, Malekith went a step further in protecting destined death. He bound the blade within his own flesh, such that none might rob death ever again. It was too late, however. This fragment of the Rune of Death was used immediately, that night, to kill a demigod, Marika's own son, Godwyn the Golden.
That was the first recorded death of a demigod in all history. And it became
Where does he get those videos? I wanna see them. Like, I didn't see this is so awesome, but where do you get them? This wasn't in the game.
the catalyst. Soon, the Elden Ring was smashed, and thus sprang forth the war known as the Shattering.
Now, there is a lot of really credible evidence that Marika was behind this plot to have a fragment of the Rune of Death stolen. There's also a ton of evidence that Marika is behind the entirety of your tarnished quest, but we'll talk about that in another video. For now, all you really need to know, in terms of the timeline
That
at
Marika
least,
is a bitch.
is this. After the marriage of Marika and Radagon, and after a fragment of the Rune of Death was stolen, Marika went on to shatter the Elden Ring, and Radagon attempted to repair it, to no avail. The Elden Ring had been broken into runes, some great and some small. Now, you'd think this is when the world would fall apart, like the Elden Ring, you know, and the Shattering War would ensue, but it kind of can't have happened like that. Instead, order must have remained loosely held together for a time. In fact, I speculate that this is why the Divine Towers were built. They're arranged in a ring, and there's one Divine Tower for each great rune of the Elden Ring, so that even after the Shattering, some semblance of order could be maintained, and the Elden Ring could be kept together to an extent. But order wasn't the only thing that was getting forced back together at this stage.
This one.
You know, it's said that Lord Radagon...
This one, yeah, this one. There is a spell. I should have used the spell. I was waiting for the gesture to unlock the regression, but I should have used the
harbored
spell.
a secret. A famed sculptor of the Erdtree capital was once summoned to render Lord Radagon's likeness in giant stature, when he glimpsed the skeleton in Radagon's closet. And as such, it's said the great statue harbors his secret too.
Of course, the huge twist in Elden Ring is that Radagon is Marika, or depending on what you believe, he became her, for she knew it was going to happen.
In Marika's own words, O Radagon, leal hound of the Golden Order, thou art yet to become me. Thou art yet to become a god. Let us be shattered, both. Mine other self.
You can tell when From Software is keeping something a little bit open-ended, and of everything in Elden Ring's lore, this will also go on to be...
This explain every fucking thing. Oh my god. So at the end, you see Marika hanged, like on some kind of a cross, and then she falls down, and the fight is with Radagon. But this explain everything, and the secret is... Oh, and the gold mask. That's what gold mask was trying to tell Corin. Radagon is Marika.
one of the biggest unknowns as we move forward. For example, the wording, thou art yet to become me, reinforces that Marika and Radagon were two separate entities before the Shattering. However, in contrast, there is also evidence that Radagon was always part of Marika. For example, Enya says that
The demigods are each and all the direct offspring of Queen Marika.
but how can this be if Radagon married Renala and had those demigod children? The only way that makes sense is if Radagon was always Marika and he just went over there to seduce Renala long ago. I'll present more concrete theories in the future, but on this matter, the most important thing is, what do you think? While you can figure out a ton of Elden Ring's story, not all of it is open to interpretation. Certain things are, and this is one of them. And your interpretation is a big part of what makes this.
Yeah, so here the main conflict is whether Radagon and Marika were two different entities and then they merged, or Radagon was always Marika, like transformed. So yeah, but it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day they are the same person. They became the same person. Whether they merged or they were all along, it doesn't matter. But this makes
This story special.
everything. Oh, wow.
At any rate, the union of Radagon and Marika seems to be a union of two fundamental opposing laws of the Golden Order. We mentioned these laws earlier, actually. There's the law of causality, and Marika is an agent of cause and effect. And there's the law of regression, as Radagon is a character who aspires to be complete and regress together. So I have a theory that forcing these two beings that represent these concepts together would have corrected Marika's deviance. But even so, she was imprisoned in the Erd Tree for the crime of the Shattering.
Marika's trespass demanded a heavy sentence. But even in shackles, she remains a god and the vision's vessel.
So the Elden Ring had been shattered, but as I mentioned earlier, there kind of had to have been a period of relative peace here before the Shattering War began. In fact, for example, the conjoined Radagon and Marika even had two demigod children of their own during this time, Mckellar and Millennia. These two children were born afflicted. Mckellar was cursed with eternal childhood, and Millennia harbored a horrific rot within. Even so, these two children were both chosen as Emperians. They were immensely sacred beings and eligible to inherit godhood from the Greater Will. Perhaps the Greater Will was just desperate to find a worthy successor, and indeed in the Shattering War to come, many would try to claim the shards of the Elden Ring, and they would try to take the throne, including, of course, the Tarnished, who returned from their long march at long last, which we'll talk about in the next main lore video. I should probably also mention here that if you become a patron, you'll see upcoming lore videos early, as that's one of the rewards you get if you pledge to the $3 tier. And if you think my channel really adds a lot of value to the Souls games for you to the point where you pledge $20, then in this new tier, you'll receive a new mug every 3 months that has a unique design on it, to do with the games by From Software. There are 4 to collect. The first one you'll get is inspired by Dark Souls, then Elden Ring, then Sekiro, and finally Bloodborne. And they all have fantastic art that I worked on with an amazing artist named Chu. But anyway, I figured this is the right place to end this video because the information here is going to be overwhelming. I bet it probably was too overwhelming, you know? It took me ages to commit these names and the relationships they had with other characters to memory, so I hope you guys are doing alright. One thing that helped me a lot was that we designed an enormous mind map with pretty much all of Elden Ring's lore, all of its item descriptions, all of its dialogues, all of the relationships between characters that we can think of. We added all of this together and it helped a ton in learning about the story and visualizing it all. And one day I will make this asset available to you all because I think after doing it, I think this is the quintessential way to piece together the story, and I think giving you guys this asset eventually will make that accessible for people. So I'm really excited about that. I want to thank Absa and Zard for accepting the paid task of helping me put all the raw data into this mind map so that I could better understand everything. I want to thank Paragod for fulfilling all of my footage requests and creating so many cinematic scenes for this video and for you all to enjoy. And I last of all want to thank John Devlin for the incredible thumbnail. And of course, thank you for watching. There are some really exciting things ahead, and I actually believe this might be the best story that From Software have ever put together. I just think not only are there so many amazing item descriptions, but so many of them are impactful. There are so many moments where you piece together the story and have like a eureka moment, and I'm enjoying it so much. But now I'm gonna go and play the game a little bit because I've been editing this video for too long. So, see you next time.
Wow. Wow. So, okay, this was a bit of an overview about Marika and the Greater Will, and so the first big surprise was that there was an Earth tree, a tree before the Earth tree, and that, all right. Now, why did Marika shatter the ring? We still don't know, but it looks like she merged with Radagon, and the biggest mind blown was that Hawara Lu was the father of all Tarnished, and he was Godfrey. I knew he was Godfrey from the fight, but so Godfrey was a more controlled Huaralu with the beast on his back. He looked so epic. And after he beat everyone, Marika said, well, you did your job. Get out of my bed. Choo-choo. Go fight outside in another land and then come back later after you die. I will revive you or whatever, some bullshit. And then she went and married Radagon, or she became Radagon. Wow. Okay. Lots of shit to take in. I can't wait for his next video. Also, I noticed some of his cinematics are probably from the videos that were released before the game, so I still need to check that. But hey, let's check this video, the 15 noteworthy secrets of Elden Ring.
The sun is
hello
out.
there.
The music is in your control.
Skip.
Did you know you could do this?
Yeah, I read it in a paper, but
This
I never
tip
tried
is
it.
given to us by an in-game note, which
Yeah.
says, your opportunities for a plunging attack will be rare indeed. And while that is true, the hitbox on this is really janky, you can definitely pull off some spectacular kills. Give it a try. And I wonder, are there any other enemies that are open to plunging attacks? What other secrets haven't we found yet? This game is absolutely brimming with hidden content, and I feel like this secrets video is going to be the first of many on Elden Ring, so
This is where
subscribe
we
for
go
that.
to the frenzy.
But in this video, we're going to be talking about all the noteworthy secrets that From Software themselves have written down for us. Most of these you can buy from the merchants found throughout the game, and while some of these notes aren't worth the paper that they're printed on, today we're going to talk about the ones that are, and also how the most hidden of these notes lead you to the dark secrets of the merchants themselves.
Yep.
Now, for this next secret, I want to try and help you defeat an enemy that I know a lot of you have been having trouble with,
Yes.
the land squirts.
Ah.
They need to be nerfed, honestly it's bullshit, but until then, you can defeat them with poison easily. It's counterintuitive.
I read this note, but I thought the land squirts were the things that drop down from above, and this is why I tried poisons on
But
them.
poisoning these things overloads them with toxin, and they can't expel it fast enough, so they tragically explode in their own poison cloud. This, in turn, poisons the land squirts around them, who explode and poison the ones around them, and so on and so on. It's kind of sad watching them fall victim to their own poison in this way, but also strangely satisfying. This same strategy can be used against the giant land squirts found in northeastern Leonia, and the Scarlet Rot variant as well, found in Caelid, which can also be overloaded with Scarlet Rot. Pick your poison, or don't, and just knock them over with a couple of R2s instead. Land squirts are softest where they touch the ground. Another counterintuitive strategy can be used against the Royal Revenants, who actually are extremely difficult, and a lot of people are having trouble
Oh
with.
shit.
They never give you a
Those
chance to
bitches.
heal, which is the hardest part. That said, if you do get a chance to heal your damage, they might just take damage instead. Any AoE heal can be used to absolutely destroy them in this way, and if you use more powerful heals, that's even more true. This same logic applies to their
where did
followers
that-
as well, who are all cursed, just like them.
Yeah, there
Thus, your heals
was a
will
note talking about this, about healing, but I never
palm
paid attention
rather
to it.
than mend. Curiously, you can even sort of poison them with healing over time spells, which is a great touch if you want to make them suffer, and I know a lot of you do. I've seen the forum posts.
Yes.
Another contender for the most hated enemy are the Stormville Warhawks, particularly the
Yeah,
ones
I
that
read this.
peg fire barrels at you. Use gravity magic, however, and you can just devastate them. The same goes for any flying foe. They will all be brought low by spells like Gravity Well or Ashes of War, like Gravitas. Another enemy you can bring low are the Stone Digger Trolls, whose heads bear old wounds. With one well-aimed ranged attack, preferably while they're doing that roar, they'll be left reeling, which gives you ample time to charge some R2s and bring them to their knees. This next note is a little less useful, but interesting. Slay the demi-human mob's leader first, and the rest will lose hope and panic.
Yeah.
I mean, you should probably always be killing the little guys first, if you can, so I'm not sure how helpful this one is, but it is cool to see their tribal dependence on a leader from a gameplay point of view. Speaking of things you can't see though, have you fought an invisible Black Knife assassin
We need a
yet?
torch.
They're tough. I only beat my first one by relying on spirit summons to point out where they are. Luckily though, there's a better way of beating these guys. The merchant in the Hermit Merchant's Shack sells a sentry's torch, which is bestowed with a special incantation that allows the bearer to see assassins cloaked in veils. It was this invisibility that allowed the Black Knives to steal the Rune of Death and slay Godwyn the Golden ages ago. Thus, sentry torches were given to Erdtree sentries such that a Knight of Black Knives would never come again. Another type of revealing light is commonly seen in hero graveyards. This light stems from Rosas's staff, and it can be used to make shadow enemies vulnerable. While you're going through these dungeons as well, remember sometimes these enemies need to be defeated in order for you to progress. Speaking of Rosas, this is a character that you see represented all throughout the Lands Between. He is the Usher of Death, and when his statues are activated, they shine a light that points towards a dungeon. Sometimes what he's pointing to is really obvious, and sometimes the light is pointing you towards dungeons that are very hidden indeed. Specifically though, this light always points towards catacomb-type dungeons. After all, the dead easily lose their way, and have always been in sore need of a guiding hand. I think they're looking for a way back to the roots of the Erdtree, which seem to always appear in these catacomb dungeons. For number 10, there is a hidden cave in the town of Celia. Look beyond the graveyard at the precipice.
Yeah, this is where you do the quest.
Yeah, they're using the term town pretty loosely here. You have to go quite far
me way
north
too
to
long
find
to
the
find it.
illusory wall behind the graveyard. This is the Celia hideaway. It's a glintstone cavern that you'll need to find
This
at
is
one
what
point
the
if you're on
master-
Sorceress Sellen's questline, and her questline leads you through a locked door that you can find within as well. But if you're not on that questline, you can also pick up a Crystal Torrent spell, which recently got buffed, a Crystal Spear, and the Crystallian Ashes, which are an excellent summon against anything that doesn't use blunt damage. I'd recommend it. Next, for number 11, we're going to start talking about the merchants. This nomadic tribe.
Yeah, the merchants were. We find out about them while going down to the frenzy place, and they were imprisoned there to die on their own, and this is where the flame of frenzy burst.
They're absolutely intriguing, and there's so much more to them than you'd expect. You're first introduced to them at the start of the game, of course, with Kale, who can be used to kick off Blythe's questline. After hearing a howling in the Mistwood, speak to Kale and he'll say this.
The howl of a wolf in the Mistwood.
That's new.
I suppose he must still be skulking about. I know. Why not meet him for yourself?
Perform the emote here in the forest, and I'll let you see where this questline leads. Kale also sells a note that tells you the location of Sorceress Sellen, who you can talk to kick off her questline, which we just mentioned continues in the hidden cave in
I
Celia.
did not know about the.
So all of these
light.
notes are written by the merchants. They probably have a lot of collective intelligence as a nomadic tribe, and they
Oh, the notes are written by the merchant. That's why one of the notes says, "Our Lord, Lord of Frenzy."
sell this to adventurers. But one of these notes tells you not to go somewhere, and it's a note about the Frenzied Flame village, which is inhabited by the sick and located south of the Grand Lift of Dectus. A lot of folks would have missed this location, since it sort of requires you to double back from the Grand Lift, get past the tower, inflicting you with madness, hide from it, just like you hid from the brain of Mensis when it afflicted you with frenzy in Bloodborne. Atop this tower of frenzy is the Howl of Shaburi spell, and at the precipice of the cliff beyond it is the Frenzied Flame village. Here you can get the Shaburi's Woe talisman, the Frenzied cookbook, and you can also have an encounter with Vike, who drops a frenzy spear, and also a grape for Hyetta, who is an NPC whose questline goes down the path that I'm about to describe. Perhaps the most curious thing in this village, though, is a corpse of someone who has died of frenzy in the corner hidden in some bushes, there's a note on his body that hides a clue that will lead you further down the path of Frenzy. Like the others, this note is, of course, written by a merchant, and this one tells us who their lord is. Beneath Lanedell, at the very bottom, lies our lord, Lord of the Frenzied, the three fingers who holds us in thrall. Note that when you fight a merchant, a lot of them fight with Frenzy. This note prompted me to explore further, beyond the sewers. It led me to a new boss fight, and then when I knew that this couldn't possibly be the end of the path, it prompted me to go even further, to activate the passageway behind the boss fight and find the odd 1,000 corpses of frenzied folk that remain here. They look a lot like merchants. They probably are merchants. They have the exact same little hand-scratcher violin bow that a lot of them wield. I'll let you venture further down here and discover this place for yourself. At the bottom, you'll find a very curious door, one that most characters won't be able to open straight away. So this is the 14th secret, which I will provide, and I'm going to make it a riddle for you. So here it is. Only the wretched will be able to get past this door. And if you do get past this door, you will unlock a new ending. Although, fair warning, you should probably talk to Melina at the Grace after you come down here to figure out if this is an ending you'd actually want. And also while you're down here, turn to the right after you drop down and go through the illusory wall for a rune arc and the entrance to the Deep-Root Depths, which is an area that just has the most hidden entrances to it, but this is actually a pretty convenient one while you're down here. Further back, though, we find another note, and it has the final clue to all of this, in case you regret getting past this door and the path that it puts you down. So to get this note, you have to trick a frenzied enemy into destroying one of these makeshift huts, and the note within it reads, "The Emperian Mckellar crafted a needle to resist the influence of the outer gods. Those who have inherited the flame of frenzy, yet wish not to become its lord, would do well to seek Mckellar's needle. In order to get Mckellar's needle, you'll need to follow Millicent's questline all the way to the end. It starts with Gowry, here in Caelid, and it ends all the way at the Halig Tree with Melania. Once you have this needle, you can embed it in your flesh, but you can only do so here at Faram Azula. And here, the Flame of Frenzy will no longer have any power over you, and it will no longer influence your ending." I really want to talk more about this, but it would end up being like a 30-minute lore video, so subscribe for that if you're interested. I love that this secrets video ended here, though. It's just a small taste of the story that's to come, as Elden Ring's lore is just maddeningly addictive. Before I go, though, please consider listening to Audible, who graciously sponsored this video. Now, it's no secret that if you love the world building of Elden Ring, then you'll probably love the world of The Witcher as well. My favorite way to dive into this world isn't actually through the games, though, it's through the audiobook. This is The Last Wish, a collection of short stories that went on to inspire the Witcher games. Have a listen.
The stranger was not old, but his hair was almost entirely white. Beneath his coat, he wore a worn leather jerkin laced up at the neck and shoulders. As he took off his coat, those around him noticed that he carried a sword. Not something unusual in itself. Nearly every man in Vachim carried a weapon. But no one carried a sword strapped to his back as if it were a bow or a quiver.
You can listen to this full audiobook or any other completely free during your trial period. So head over to audible.com/VaatiVidya or text VaatiVidya to 500 500 and consider signing up. This audiobook is read by Peter Kenny, and he does an excellent job with character accents and inflections, which I think is really important in an audiobook. Another reason I think people will love this listen is that it's a collection of short stories, which is just a perfect format for audiobooks because you can finish an entire story while you listen on the bus or while you're doing some housework, things like that. So, again, head over to audible.com/VaatiVidya or text VaatiVidya to 500 500 to start your free trial. Thanks to Audible for sponsoring this video, and thank you for watching.
Wolf secret. Cool. Okay, one more video. Let's check this one.
BCAA member? Lucky you.
15 more
Save
essential
3 cents per
discoveries
liter on
in
fuel
Elden
at
Ring.
Shell, plus 10% off car wash and 10% off in-store purchases. Shell, taking care of effortless savings.
Guys, you've got to do this for your girl. They won't be able to keep their hands off you.
We need to talk about the way your balls smell.
As in my balls smell good?
What
okay,
the fuck?
so this is how you should be warping to the round table hold. Done. It's literally that easy. Now, be honest, how many of you are still dragging your cursor there manually? Instead, you just have to press triangle or Y to open the list of Grace checkpoints, and then you press square or X to confirm a warp straight there. It took me way too long to discover that this was a thing. But Elden Ring is full of little quality of life things like this that are never explained, so I'm going to quickfire 4 more.
I knew that one.
For example, if you walk through a beacon of light that you've placed, the beacon will disappear. Yeah. So this is an excellent way to mark that you've actually reached your destination without having to pull up your map. Next, if an enemy explodes in a burst of blue light, that means they're going to drop an item. Don't miss it. And when you do pick up an item, take note of this icon. This tells you which category of your inventory that item just went into. This will make it way easier to figure out what you just picked up. Another great way to go over your recent loot is to press L3 on the inventory menu. This will let you sort in order of acquisition and look over all of the items that you recently looted at the bottom. By default though, your inventory is sorted into vertical categories that are demarcated by these horizontal lines. For example, the bolstering material.
I knew about the sorting, I just never thought about using it for sorting by latest acquisition. Oh, that would have been much easier.
This tab organizes your flask materials, your smithing stones, and your somber smithing stones into their own sections. Every tab is like this. Now, with those quality of life tips out of the way, let's get into the big stuff. First off, how would you like to have a buff that gives you 5% extra runes? To get this, all you have to do is type in 7 letters. So in the last Secrets video, I announced Secret Seekers, which is our community group. To join, enter the password SEEKERS in all caps as your first group password in your multiplayer tab, and you'll be able to identify phantoms, bloodstains, messages, and summon signs from other people in the group. Our goal is to find secrets in the game and to share them with others. And since then, I can't go 5 minutes without finding evidence of you guys hurling yourselves off cliffs in search of secrets. I look at scenes like this, covered in blood, and you make me so proud. But since then, we've also discovered that every time someone in the group defeats a shard bearer or becomes Elden Lord, everyone else in the group receives a 5% buff to their rune acquisition. And, considering there are thousands of you in this group, this buff activates like constantly. Join us and enjoy your free runes. Also, I put the Secret Seekers logo onto a shirt. So if you want to rep our unofficial covenant, check it out in the link below. Another way to get free runes is by duplicating your Remembrances. Godric's, for example, gives 20,000 runes, and subsequent bosses give even more than that. Every major boss drops a Remembrance, though the proper way to use them is to trade them in for boss items at Enya, the finger reader at Round Table Hold. And here, you'll realize that every Remembrance can be traded in for multiple items, so it's possible to duplicate them at the walking mausoleums that are found throughout the game. Here's what some of our testing revealed. First, there are 7 walking mausoleums in total, one in Limgrave, 3 in Leonia, 1 in the mountaintops of the Giants, 1 in the consecrated snowfield, and the last in the Deeproot depths. The method of bringing down a mausoleum differs in most cases, I'll let you figure it out, but it's generally related to removing the white curse marks from their body. And it's worth finding your way up to each of these, because you can only duplicate 1 remembrance per mausoleum. After duplicating, that mausoleum becomes pretty obsolete. Interestingly, you don't actually need the remembrance in your inventory to duplicate it. You just have to have defeated the boss you got it from. Also, note that you cannot duplicate remembrances that you have already claimed all of the items from. And finally, make sure to use your duplicate.
Oh, this is great, because I was noting which one I did, which one I didn't. So I don't have to
missions before heading into New Game Plus, because your remaining duplications won't carry over. In addition to receiving a remembrance, defeating a shard bearer will also grant you a great rune. Once acquired, you have to go to its corresponding divine at assigns bestow powerful effects upon your to do humanity previous games. The lore here is that, you know, even the most valuable items in the world make their way down to the bottom of the food chain, to the rats that consume the bodies of all. Every great rune does something different. Godric's, for example, increases every one of your attributes by 5, which sounds low, but then you have to remember that's essentially granting you 40 extra levels for a limited time. Characters that use a wide variety of spells and scalings will by about 10%. Remember, make use of rune arcs. Don't just let them sit wasted in your inventory, you know, next to all the other consumables that you're afraid to use. Equip them to your pouch and pop one whenever you're on a really difficult boss, because it might be this item that pushes you over the edge to victory. Renala's Great Rune is a bit of an out level of so respec. Try something so easy, right? Is a mechanic that exists for when you put down might be via pardoning, which, let's be honest, in front of an NPC, they get a steal due fast.
I know this.
And will take it out on. So, you regret this decision, angst to let out, you know, don't take it out on NPCs that don't really exist. Take it out on other human beings, like a normal person. Your item for Infinite Invasion is Church. Libre UTA, agent on fountain. Pick up the white cipher ring from the Twin Maiden husks at the Round Table Hold. With this buff active, you'll automatically request help from another player, then you can just companion, embrace the cipher ring, and you'll receive a Baldicon's blessing. Now, and it's kind of funny that not many people realize this, but did you know that your maximum health is reduced while you have this blessing in your inventory? Yeah, so this debuff icon means that you're losing about 5% of your health, and it's a debuff that remains until you fully use her Baldicon's blessing. And I don't blame people for not realizing this. The buff and debuff icons get pretty intense in Elden Ring, and as a side note, icons with a square around them are permanent effects from rings, and ones with diamonds around them are temporary. But the biggest question here is the Baldicon's blessing worth it? And the answer is, kind of. Sometimes, the Baldicon's blessing essentially gives you a type of poise for about 15 seconds once it's consumed. This is extremely useful when you're facing a lot of minor enemies, as you'll completely ignore their small attacks and only get staggered by their strong attacks. However, the blessing seems pretty pointless when you're facing a single enemy or any large enemy, so I'd honestly only recommend bothering with this mechanic if you know that extra poise will serve you well in an encounter to come, like in a cave with lots of rats, or demi-humans, or flying projectiles. But the main reason to go back to Fear every now and then is because you'll eventually get a dialogue option for progressing. For number 14, have you ever found yourself disappointed with the amount of armors that you can alter? In a chest to the right, so start Limgrave and Leonia. Alterations for, and if you can't find him here, that means he's moved on to that lets you apply Ashes of War. Special thanks to Absa, who helped me with a bunch of the research for this video. And again, check out our Secret Seekers Covenant and merch if you're interested. Subscribe for more Elden Ring content.
I think, yeah, the lore video was awesome. Really cool. Learned a lot. The secret video were meh so far. So I learned most of them. So yeah, I'm gonna see if this video is good. I'll rewatch it and maybe I'll do more or not. I have no idea. That's it for here. Thanks for watching and Wise out.